my inner knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Well,
Hello.
Pattie.
Hey, Pattie.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for joining us this morning. So we have lots of things we are curious about, and I'm going to let Walker start because he's really excited.
I am, Pattie, just so there's background. We found your art in a shop in Florence, Oregon,
Yes.
and I just fell in love with it. And I describe it, it's like a mixture of whimsical, but there's other depths to it that just really speak to me. And so I want to share some of that with our viewers and listeners, and then hopefully we can hear some of your process, how you get in that space where you are in touch with this is working for me and I'm in the flow, or however you describe it. So that's kind of a prelude, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we can start it off. Let's do it this way. I've got my favorite, as I've told you now several times before we started, is Ride the Wind Down the Mountain. And let's see if I can get this in our camera space. I need you to show it to us, babe, so I can get
I
it.
could do that. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And what I love best about that is that his stripes are coming up out of the earth and from the roots of the tree, it looks like. It's just tremendous. I love this.
Yeah.
So I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about a background about the piece, and then, if we can tie it in with your process and getting, how something amazing like this comes into being from your soul.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
I have these ideas, and that particular one is thanks to my yoga qigong teacher, who was doing the tiger qigong, which is ancient 24 movements and one of the movements is called Ride the Wind Down the Mountain. And it's about the tiger represents the shaman going up to the mountain to discover what he needs to discover about the world, and he gets up to the mountain and then he becomes enlightened, and then he rides the wind down the mountain. So there's a little caricatures on there, and I had to check with Nancy's, my yoga teacher's. She's no longer with us now, but her brother is a Chinese Japanese instructor in Michigan. So I checked with him to make sure I had them right and I wasn't saying something bad on the side, because I'm pretty sure I had copied them correctly. But that was the idea of it, was that one. I had kind of a series of those, one where the tiger is climbing the mountain, but that's in a different medium.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. The characters are here.
Well, your work is all on your website, is that right?
Most of it, yes.
Would we see that series of the tiger in there as well?
The whole series is not on there because part of it is in oil, and I don't have any of that up on my website because I don't do it anymore. But I started it with that, and then that was when I was in the process of developing the kind of the style that I have right now. So consciously or unconsciously developing it. But so I had always intended to go back and do the whole 24 movements, but
wow.
That didn't happen. But I can send you those.
I would love to
So
see the rest if you'd share that. Yeah.
I think
It's just amazing.
some of my pictures as I do them are on Flickr and they never get up to the website, but
Sure, sure. So when you are creating, Patty, like that, what are you tapping into inside of you? Like you have the vision, and then what, as best as you can describe, what is your process?
well, first it starts with a vision that's in my head, and then I start getting different references, and I always go from 10 or 12 different references as far as, and then draw it from that. And then I end up drawing a sketch. And as I'm going along, sometimes the entire piece becomes something else I didn't plan on. Because I've learned that when you try really hard to make it come out the way you want it to come out, it's just a struggle. So
Yeah.
finally, when I sort of, not with that particular painting, but with some paintings, I'm just like, okay, I give up. I'll just do whatever I want to with this. And then they turn out pretty good. So I'm saying that comes from somewhere else. So they're trying to, the force is coming through me, and it may create something else.
Yeah.
Or as I'm painting it, and I start to feel like the painting is telling me things. So and then that's kind of when I really get into it, that's what happens. But there are things that happen that don't let you get there sometimes.
Yeah. What comes to mind when you say that? Sometimes there's things that don't let you get there. What comes to mind?
Well, right now, where I have my studio, it also is connected to the garage. And so my husband likes to come through, and he likes to sing, and he's kind of loud, and he, wants to say hello and everything. That kind of breaks your what I call your sacred solitude, And it's like, so we've had this discussion that we don't want, but he keeps forgetting. He's 87, and he's very sweet, and he's very supportive, but he wants to visit. So
Yeah.
that kind of will break it. So, but now I put a sign up, don't come in unless you have to go to the hospital.
It sounds like healthy boundaries.
Got
Yeah.
a sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just makes me think about, like you said, did you call it the sacred silence? Is that what you called it?
Sacred solitude. It's kind of like
Solitude.
sanctuary, or your sacred sanctuary, or your sacred solitude. It's just a combination of different people that I've read through the years that, and then lately, the man that does my website, his name is Clint Watson, and he's in the process of writing a book called see what the name of the book is. It's called The Sovereign Artist Within. He hasn't finished it yet, but so he puts up all these little blog pieces about that sort of thing. And the last one that really got to me was he was explaining that there's these three aspects of your consciousness. It's your waking consciousness, or your aware consciousness. Then there's the artist within, or some people call it the muse. And then there's a shadow side, and the shadow side likes to protect. In his explanation of this, the shadow side likes to protect the muse, and wants to help the muse to get to you. And so if he can't, then if the muse, she or he, can't get to you, then the shadow side acts up. So you get all grumpy with people, and you might take up drinking, or any number of those things, because you're not getting your muse is not able to get out, or your creative spirit is not able to get out. And that could be creative spirit to do anything, you know, not just painting. But so when this, and it's like the demon within, he calls it. So when that comes up, that means you really need to get in and start working on yourself.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
he
When you
calls that
say, yeah,
having,
I'm sorry.
he calls that having your sacred solitude. So
Sacred solitude. I
Mhm.
like it. Mm.
In the start of your process, you said first I'll have the, you know, the image or the vision.
mhm.
What is your process that you go through to get that?
Well, I start looking at all kinds of images because I'm like a visual person, and I see in pictures and think in pictures, and just images start to inspire me as to how I'm going to lay the piece out. So I got it completely in my head. So, like for instance, the Wisdom Council, which I don't know if you saw, but
Yes.
there were 5 owls, and all I had was a vision in my mind of 5 owls. But as I was, yeah, that one. That's
Love
right.
it.
And they're called the Wisdom Council, and they come together to discuss the state of the world. That was the idea of that. So I looked up all these owls and found pictures of owls from different areas in the world. The green one is a crested owl, and it comes from South America. And some of the other ones are in our United States in different areas.
Wow.
Snowy
Yeah.
owl in the north.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
as I was, going through that, that's one of the ones that started to speak more to me, because it was just the image in my head at first, and what it became something else. And it was kind of a hard time coming because I just wasn't working, and painting just wasn't, it was there, and everybody would go, oh, that's really, really nice. That would come into the studio, but then I knew something was wrong with it. But finally I put clouds over the moon, and it just worked. I didn't have clouds over the moon before. So there were too many light sources. That's that part is not in when you're in the zone. Those things aren't there. That comes later in your consciousness that knows about composition and everything else. And you say the composition, okay, I got this whole thing down, but the composition isn't working, so I might chop off one side or something like that. Or whatever. But it's like that is something that I never really understood completely till I was a teacher, and then I had to teach the principles of art to my students, and then I was like, oh, this is what this is all about.
Mm.
I think sometimes we learn the most when we teach,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's an odd juxtaposition, but it's true.
It is, but it's really, really true. And your students teach you too.
Mm.
Yes.
My students were high school students, but
Yeah.
I have just, as we're looking at this and you're talking about composition and just, how it came about, there's a story though that developed somehow for you. And I know because I have a book called Enchanted that you wrote and illustrated. But when you get to the point where you say those owls are discussing the state of the world,
right.
that's very touching to me because I have, just this affinity for nature. It's where I feel the best.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it's part of why I love your work so much. But how does the story come to you? What told you that's what they were talking about?
It just seems like when I'm painting it, all these little thoughts come into my head, and pretty much it starts to build a story. Sometimes I don't even really know, and so I've got to go, okay, what's this story about? So I might go do some research and find out, like, the one painting that I have called it's called the Procession to the Sacred Well, but it wasn't called that. All it was a hooded procession of people going somewhere. Oh, you have that one? Yeah, but
I told you I've
so
got
that
this thing.
that one and told me what it was.
Yeah. You know,
You guys have
Patty.
everything there. Like
I have
illustration.
more. It's just funny that you're picking the ones that I picked because I do have tons of art, but
Yeah.
I like it.
When you in this process, for you, do you think that you're knowing? Do you think it's in your body? Do you have a sense of it? Can you describe it? You know, like, where it just feels like, even thinking about the 5 owls, like where you're like, yep, that's it. Or the clouds over the moon. Like, how do you know when you're not quite there? And then how do you know when you are there?
Oh, when you're finished. That's when you're finished with a painting, is it? And sometimes I just sit and look at it for a while, and then it starts to say, well, I need this, or the painting is saying to me, I need this, or I need that. And it, wherever these thoughts are coming from, I'm not quite sure, but I know it must be something like what you're saying, inner knowing. And people talked about when you're really painting and it's really, everything is coming out really well, that they used to call that the zone. You're in the zone.
Sure.
My professors, I went to school for 30 years. My professors would talk about that. And like, what is that? What is it? So finally, I have this little process that I do to get ready to paint, and I turn on a certain music and I have everything ready to go, and kind of the thought in my head what I'm going to do, and pretty soon I'm into that where I'm feeling like I'm connected. And then there's another place that happens, and that's at the end of the painting. Okay, what does this need, to make it finished? So I'm there with a couple of them right now.
Yeah.
What can you describe? And maybe you can't, but what is the feeling when you know you're connected? You've got the music on, you've done your prep session, everything's ready to go, and you're there. What's it feel like?
It feels just very relaxed and exciting at the same time. I can't explain that, but you just know that, okay, this is coming out pretty good. This is where I wanted it to be. And or you have the opposite feeling, which is, yeah, this is really bad. What am I gonna do with this thing, And that is when I really found that I just say, okay, I don't care if I ruin it, I'm gonna do this and that and everything else. And sometimes it actually comes out better than I thought it was going to come out. So I think sometimes then that's me struggling with the inner knowing,
Yeah.
It's to come through, but I'm not letting it for a number of reasons.
Sure.
Earlier you were talking about sometimes getting into this space where something else is coming through you. In my mind, I describe that as allowing, a process that can be applied in lots of different experiences. But in art, how does the allowing space feel different than just you being connected?
I don't know that those two are not the same.
Okay.
Okay.
That the feeling connected is part of knowing I'm there,
Sure.
Connection. Sometimes by doing different things to the painting at the end, I feel like I'm creating a connection somehow. to make it all connect together. Unity, I don't know. That would be the art term for it, is to create unity with the painting. It's not flying apart.
Yeah, there's so many layers of the educational process behind art that, people who aren't artists or haven't developed their art skills like me, I don't have a grasp on all that goes behind it. But what I know is when I see it and I like it, and it speaks to me.
Yeah.
That makes me feel good if people are connecting to it too, because that means you kind of got. So somebody years ago called it the golden thread. That if you're connected to the golden thread, and then you're on the universal idea of what everyone responds to, human beings respond to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share more about the golden thread? I mean, is there more to it than that?
Well, I don't think every painting is really got the golden thread, but some of them really seem to bring touch people more than others.
Yeah.
And sometimes one person is touched by something somebody else isn't, by whatever their experience.
Right.
So I have to just let go of my control over it all to be able to get to that space, because when I try to control it too much, it never works out very well. And there's paintings that I have probably up right now that don't read they don't seem to respond to anybody, but they did to me. So I don't know whether that makes a difference too. And eventually someone will come along and oh, that's the best thing I ever saw.
Yeah.
But usually I can figure out why it's not working out, but that's my conscious knowing composition, all those things that you do when you are starting to learning how to paint. You have to have your point of interest, your composition, your unity of the whole painting, and then also like maybe you want to have movement, maybe you want to have rhythm, so all of those things are kind of like will come back consciously and go, oh, okay, this is what it seems to be wanting to do. And so then you let that come out.
Yeah. When did you start creating in this way, Pattie?
Oh, late in life.
Okay.
I'd say because I went to San Diego State in 1963 and graduated in 1993. So I had a lot of art professors through those years, those 30 years, and I was raising a family. So I really didn't let myself take the time to find my space. But when the children got a little older, I started to carve out a little space for me in the house where nobody else could go.
Yeah.
And I've heard other artists talk about it, like some really famous artists where she had 10 children and she had a closet that she opened up when they were all gone and would do her artwork. For women, it's kind of, I think, I don't want to say it's this way for everyone, but it's difficult because you have the responsibilities of the household sometimes and the children and all of that. So it's fun to listen to how they actually did their artwork when they're so famous. When one woman would do them all in her head, and when she finally got to her house, she would be able to paint this painting.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to doing the painting in your head when you know what you want to do, and then you're just sort of doing it psychologically, and then when you're ready to go, you can just put it down there. The other woman that had the closet, she would just have all these paintings started, and then she would take them and finish them. So she'd throw down all the color, and she's a watercolorist. So throw down all the color and then decide later what it was.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I've done that before. It's actually an interesting way to work.
So for you, what are the different mediums that you have experimented with, and which ones do you prefer? What speaks most to you?
Water media speaks the best to me, but I really, really liked working with ink, because when I was a graphic designer, that I really enjoyed doing things with ink. And
Mhm.
so and I went back to San Diego State in the 90s. I started combining watercolor and ink, and did a little bit of experimenting with that. And then after I graduated, because there were no water media classes, really, I took a lot of oil classes to finish out my degree.
Mhm.
So for 10 years, I painted in oil.
Okay.
And did mostly landscapes. I don't think those are on the website, but I'll give you the link to the Flickr site, and all
Sure.
of those are there. But so I did that for a while. But the background of all of those paintings to me were based in what I was also studying in college at that time, and that was women's rights and rituals. And
Mhm.
so people would have these sacred sites that they would go to. And so each painting was kind of like a sacred site in my head.
Yeah.
Wasn't necessarily one that they had, but the Aborigines, they all go back to the same site. The whole family goes back to the same site once a year and once every 2 years. And because it was mostly decided by women how they would do that the anthropologists missed all of that. They didn't see that till later,
Mhm.
that it was all the women would go back to this site particularly, and a
What
connection
was
to the family.
what was the site? How was the site significant to them? I mean, as best we know, right?
Right, and it might be anything like a special tree or a
Mm.
mountain or a cave or a
Mhm.
cliff,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
and particularly in those peoples, and if you look at rituals, particularly for women, it has a lot to do with food.
Mhm. Yes.
So there's always these ritual dishes you make, and
Mhm.
that always fascinated me.
Yeah.
But my landscapes at that time, and the idea I had was to have them be sacred sites. And so there's a little bit left of that. And that's kind of how I got into so much ink and using the watercolor as a base, but then putting ink in, was because I didn't have the contrast that I had when I was painting with oil. Because I've always wanted black lines.
Yeah. So the ones that we have, those are a mixture of water and ink.
Water, ink, wash, and sometimes acrylic, a little bit of acrylic, but they all are water-based. The ink is not water-based. And actually the Watercolor Society let me in, even though it's not, because it has shellac in it. And in the first painting I did with water soluble ink, I washed over it thinking it was going to be like the other ink that I used, and it went just a black going all over everything. But it was kind of a happy accident, because it was then I started using gouache in the dark areas, and so you had all this where you could put in details into those shadow spaces. So it was That's the one, you probably don't have this one. It's called Holding the Moon. Do you have that one? It's a bear holding the moon.
Oh, actually,
You do have it in the book in Enchanted.
Yeah.
It's in there. But
Yeah.
Oh, well, shoot.
that one was the one that when I washed over it, underneath, all down in the bottom was just completely gray black mixed together, and so I had to add back color. That was the first time that happened. That's what we call a happy accident.
I'm gonna have to find it, and I keep looking down just so you know that I'm not being disrespectful, but I'm admiring your work as you're talking.
Towards the back. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, Teresa, I got your.
Oh,
Down
I'm
in
good.
Down in the branches there is where I had washed across it, and so it
Mm.
turned out to be a happy accident with that. But
Oh,
he's the one that inspired the Enchanted book.
mhm.
Yeah, book.
Just so everyone can see it.
And
That's
that one I wrote the story about using the paintings as the illustration and inspired the story, which I wrote for my grandchildren. But by the time I finished it, they were teenagers and really didn't care. They do now, but they didn't at the time.
Sure.
I wanted to go back and ask you a little bit about this painting. The I don't know what you call them because I don't know exactly what they are, but the white dots that are kind of like near.
They're carrying candles or lights because it's also like a festival of lights. Somehow I had that in my mind already, that they would be holding lights. I did a couple of sketches beforehand, but it's the ancient celebration of the goddess Bridget, which later the Irish called it Saint Bridget. So
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, so they're all holding light, so candles. Yeah,
They
And
are, and
that's
you've got
Bridget is the goddess of family and light and fire and light and actually creativity or music. That they all of those things.
yeah, it's so beautiful. Yeah.
So that when I was making that painting, then I went, okay, what are these people doing? So I started looking up all these rituals that and it's the celebration of Imbolc, which is the February 2nd. And that's what they did on that particular celebration. Was a lot of different things they did, but I just finally, that was going to be a whole series of, I did also one called the Thin Veil of Samhain, which looks like Samhain. And it's a Halloween. It's November 2nd or November 1, I think it is, when the spirits are the closest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll bet that one's fascinating. There's a real earth-centered, sense to these, and touching on indigenous cultures. Just wondering what drew you to that area, and it has driven at least the work that we're talking about.
Well, I think it's always been something that's been interesting to me because I was always interested in ancient Egypt and interested in ancient cultures of all types. And but when I took that one class, which was a class that I audited because I didn't think I was going to be able to pass it, so I audited it. It was a graduate class, so and I could have gotten an A in it. I should have. It was fun.
Was it an art class or was it
No, it was a women's studies class.
women's studies class? Okay.
Women's rights and rituals.
Okay.
And studied all of Joseph Campbell and all of that. But, I've I think the way that people are drawn to spirituality, then they didn't really have a whole lot of knowledge about anything, but that was very sacred to them. And so I think that's what kind of draws me to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to get where I am, I sort of like, well, I think I started reading about all these things, and but also reading all these books that I had no idea. My family would not have known anything about any of this because just it's too woo woo. They would.
Sure. What do
That's a woo woo, Patty. Don't talk about that.
What are some of your favorite books, Patty, that you feel like have taught you?
A whole bunch of them really, but the ones that I remember the most, just to begin with, probably was Dr. Wayne Dyer's books. I always enjoyed his books, and he's a motivational speaker too, so it was kind of fun to watch him. But
Yeah.
Julia Cameron,
Oh,
The Artist's Way.
Yeah.
And then later on, Gary Zukav wrote this book called Seat of the Soul, is what it was called. I had to look it up because I've forgotten the name of it, but it's called The Seat of the Soul. And he actually inspired me to really look more within, because he's always talked about your authentic self and, what is that,
Yeah.
So, and reading his book was very inspirational for me.
Mm.
And then art-wise, Nita Leland is she does watercolor, and she does a lot of teaching, and she does collage, and she wrote a book called The Creative Artist. And I happened to find the book on the ground one day back, let's see, when was that? It was probably in the 80s. And at that time I had a little studio in town in Escondido, and out in the parking lot was this book just sitting there. And so I went around and asked everybody, is this your book? And they went, no. So I'd had it, and it really has a lot of interesting things about how to be creative and how to get to that and how that process goes. And so it was kind of inspirational for me. And she calls it, like, inspiration comes from the words in spirit. So you actually are in spirit when you're inspired. So that was her. And then she came out with a new version of it. So I wrote to her and said, I found the first book on the ground, and now I've got to get the new copy.
Which is great. I love that.
It is great. I mean, it's nice when the universe, puts breadcrumbs in your path, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It seems like just when you need it, when you need it, there it is, And this blog of I digress, but the blog that Clint Watson does, the one where I told you about the shadow self and the conscious self and the artist within. I had just picked that up after I'd had my studio show, and everybody was coming into the studio, and it was really fun for the first 2 days. And then I started to get very resentful about them being there on the last 2 days. And I figured out what it was because I was showing them the paintings that were in progress, and I wanted to get started because I was seeing things I needed to do, and I couldn't do it because there were people coming in all the time. So I found myself getting kind of grumpy, and then I felt bad and said, what's the matter with you, Patty? You should be more receptive. So but one day, the third day, when I had somebody come in the morning, but nobody came in the rest of the day. And my husband didn't come in because he was he thought there were people there, so he was staying away.
Yeah.
So I had all that time to myself, and so when I read Clint's thing where he said, you know, the shadow side gets really grumpy if he's being blocked for any reason.
Mm,
Please communicate with your muse. So
yeah.
I thought that came just at the right time to kind of explain what was going on with me. So I sent it to all my gallery mates, because when we all get testy with each other, I said, we need to start working with your artwork instead of worrying about all these other things. Because it's hard to run a business and be an artist at the same time.
Oh, sure, sure. You know, Patty, what keeps you doing this work? What propels you?
Well, like I say, it's just, there are times when I say, okay, why are you doing this?
Mm,
But if I don't do it, I do get, it comes out negatively. So I'm
Mm.
happier when I'm doing it.
Okay.
I write too, so I'm happier when I'm writing. Writing isn't as easy because I see in pictures and not words, so I have to like wait till the words are coming.
Okay.
But I did manage to finish a novel during COVID because I wasn't painting during that time.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So what's your novel?
It's called Sea Change, and it's about a woman from Wisconsin who decides to just go as far west as she possibly can. She's had some bad things happen in her life, and she just wants to go make a new life for herself.
Mm,
So thus the title Sea Change. That's what sea change means, to make a complete change.
Hmm.
And so she ends up in this little town on the Oregon coast. Isn't that original?
It's yeah.
I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know. Anyway, the town is fictitious because it's a combination of all the coastal towns.
Mm,
And she ends up buying a bookstore and opening up a jazz bar because she's always wanted to do jazz singing and has never done it. So she does everything she wanted to do finally.
yeah.
But it's
Wow.
kind of like that's the way a lot of people that come to the coast of Oregon, they're coming because they want to get in touch with themselves that way creatively. And so they sometimes have take up art when they get here, you know, the first time in their lives, and they're in their 50s, 60s, you know, retiring from whatever they're doing. And so it's kind of a book about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm working on the sequel. The sequel is about 3 artists that are in the same town.
Wow.
That sounds like fun. Is Sea Change available to the public? If we wanted to pick it up, where would you find it? Is Amazon or
Amazon has it. Backstreet Gallery has it.
Oh, yeah. In Florence.
Well, I must have
Oregon.
missed that
Yeah.
in the corner somewhere. I don't know. I think I bought a sample of everything else you had.
Well,
goodness.
next visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cover isn't something that I did with my art. I have a gallery mate that's a photographer, and I took one of her photographs of a wave and put that on the front. So.
Wow. Wow.
No, I think it's a big theme, you know, that when we get to the point, and it doesn't happen, you know, sometimes we just never get there where we open up to what our, you know, at least one of our true purposes may be.
To create.
Right. And to take that, you know, whatever it is that precipitates the change that, you know, the sea change, right? You get to that point where it just is, this is going to happen because I cannot continue to exist the way that I've been.
Exactly. And you
gosh, it's powerful.
You realize that this life does end. So
Mhm.
if you're going to do it, you didn't just pick up and do it, because otherwise you'll be regretful that you never did,
Mhm.
and that's kind of the way I've looked at it. I'm on the downhill slope right now. I'm going
Yeah.
to be 80 next year,
Mhm.
but those are things I always wanted to do. I always wanted to do a children's book. I always wanted to do a novel, and but I've always painted and done printmaking too. I do printmaking. Not anymore, but I used to do printmaking. And too many chemicals.
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, you don't have, well, they have some now, they have some very, some printmaking materials that you don't have to use nitric acid and all of those things. But there's a lot of art materials that are really not good for you. So you have to really be aware of them.
Yeah, I would not know much about that. Yeah, yeah, but it's, it's just something to seriously consider. Yeah.
Put your brushes in your mouth.
Children's book about that, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, my goodness. What would your advice be, Patty, to people who are in that space where
Mhm.
the sea change needs to come, but they just aren't, um, they're too afraid, or whatever it is that holds you back? What's your advice to get past that barrier?
I think to just make some space for yourself to go do that. And if it's just a corner of the house or whatever, make that space and go there every single day with the idea that you're gonna do something. It doesn't have to be pressure, and you don't have to worry about if anybody's going to look at it. Just do it, just do what you feel like you want to do, whether it's, even gardening or whatever. Just if your soul is telling you that's what you want to do, you need to do it. And you need to kind of make that space for yourself, because I think a lot of people don't. They have so many other things that get in their way. Oh, I didn't do it today because I had to do this, or I had 2 loads of washing to do, or something like that. So they didn't do it. But it's like to make that space and be very stingy about it. Don't let people take it away from you. Don't let people steal your space.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Patty, one of the things I talk about often is experimenting and practicing. Like that's life, experimenting and practicing. It sounds like that's what you do.
Right. And you can do that in many, many ways. These days, there are so many places where you can online, there's teachers online. I mean, it's like it's open to you so much. And the materials are open because you can mix anything with anything nowadays, Or it used to be kind of like, well, I don't know how to do watercolor, but you start putting watercolor down and see what it does. And that's what I would tell people to do, and to not think it's too late or anything like that, because it's not too late. Good Grandma Moses. She started when she was 90, I think.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I agree. It's never too late.
Never too late. And it doesn't have to be like, if you like, you say, I don't think I could ever do art, but there's something in that stimulates your spirit. And so do that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
do that and make something that gives you joy. I think that's one of the processes too, because if you're getting so much joy about how, doing it and everything, and somebody else close to you is saying, why is that so important? Come and do this instead, because they think it's not important because it's fun.
Mm.
It's important to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. I'm thinking about that theme of, um, and I don't know what the psychological piece is behind it, but if it's fun, how could it be important? If it's easy, how could it be, worthwhile? Doesn't have to be hard to earn it, those sorts of things.
Yeah. For it to have value, right? It should be hard. Mhm.
And the value isn't necessarily in monetary value. The value is in the process. And
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always learning.
Mhm.
Well, an opportunity to always learn. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, just that's for the advice that I would give was just be and to not stop and say, oh, this isn't any good, so I'm not going to do this. Just play with it and have a good time doing it, and you come up with something, because I think everybody has got an artist within themselves,
Yeah.
and I think they if you play enough, you figure out what marks you make that are interesting to you.
Yeah. I have some pieces that I created a few years ago that are still in process. And I look at them, and I also think about the setting aside the time, to step back into that space. Definitely the artist piece is something that, I recognize I have some resistance to. And I also know that when I'm in that space, that I've created the space and I have the time, that it feels very meditative for me.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
It is meditative for you. And these days, even your art journals, it doesn't have to be a piece of paper you hang on the wall or a piece of canvas that you put on the wall. Everything can be in a journal, and playing with that every day. It's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah. Nice. I like that.
Less pressure.
Yeah, I've seen those smaller sketch journals that are like just sketch paper instead of,
Right.
yeah.
It's amazing. Some of them are even labeled as art journals, and so you can glue
Okay.
down all of the things that are interesting to you and paint in it, or just that's the one thing that if you're needing that space to come to, you could come and do something like that, because it's all for you. It's not for anyone else, and you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about. I had a class one time that we'd made masks, and this wonderful woman that was in her 80s said, I said, well, aren't you going to take yours home? And she goes, no, 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 my husband would make too much fun of it. And so, I just said, well, so I still have her mask.
Aw. Nice. Nice, Patty. I
She
like
also
them.
said, halfway in when we're putting plaster on her face, oh, honey, be careful when you take it off, because my skin is very thin and you might pull off some of my skin with it. I went, after we already get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to put all this stuff into the podcast.
Okay, it teaches us all. It teaches us all. Yeah. Oh, Patty, thank you so much for this time today and sharing, some of your process and your artwork and your journey and just those words of encouragement. Because I agree with you too that we all have an artist within, and I unfortunately think very few of us get to let it out. I don't feel like it's encouraged as much as I think it would be helpful for us to. I just think it teaches us so much about who we are and how we see things,
I agree with that.
ourselves in the world. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you. And thank you for doing this, not just the podcast, but putting your creations out in the world, because they are beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
I think
you're
they need
welcome.
to go out into the world. I used
Mhm.
to want to keep all of them years and years ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you kind of realize that, they need to go out.
Yeah.
People need to see them.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. Any last thoughts you have, babe?
I just am very appreciative, as Teresa said. It's and for you sharing, going deep to share the process behind it, how it feels, all those things. It's sometimes people don't, aren't able to access it or don't want to go there. And I appreciate you doing that for us. It helps everybody, learn how to make those choices in life. So thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
giving us permission. I think about
Yeah.
that. We need so much permission.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one more thing, and that is that art is a way to heal yourself. I
Mm.
believe. And it's worked with me. I think it's worked with people that I know, and it is just your little personal art journal as a way to reach some healing for yourself, And during a very hard period in my life where we lost 4 people in the family within 5 years due to suicide,
Wow.
it was a difficult time. And if I didn't have my art at that point, I think I might have gone crazy with that.
Wow.
I'd go and dissolve into that instead of be into what was going on.
Yeah.
Sure. My goodness.
Yeah.
So that's always been important to me, is having it be a way to heal yourself as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're healing others too, because for me, when I look at these, it's that connection with earth, and not just observing it, but there's a feeling behind it too, that this art evokes in me, and I think that's healing too. So,
Yeah.
it's way more than just for you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for liking my artwork.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Patty. It was really lovely.
Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.